It was a quiet night at the local radio station, the kind where the company is the hum of the transmitter and the occasional crackle of static. The DJ was halfway through his graveyard shift, and he decided to open the lines for listeners to share their late night stories. That's when the call came in. A voice sounding distant, panicked, and confused, claiming that they had just been in a terrible car accident on a lonely stretch of highway. They weren't calling from an ambulance or the police. They were disoriented, begging for help, finding something that they had lost in the wreckage. As the DJ tried to keep the caller calm and pinpoint their location, the conversation took a turn. The voice on the other end wasn't looking for a wallet or a phone. They were frantically searching for their own body. When authorities finally arrived at the scene, they found the wreckage of a car that had happened hours before, with the driver apparently deceased inside. This is the story of the urban legend of the dead caller. Let's get spooky. Hey, spooky people. It's your best friend, Kenny, and we are back with another disturbing story. Before we get to today's story, let's make sure that you're subscribed to this channel. Please like, share, comment on this video for the algorithm, and hit the hype button. Thank you. Ghost stories and telephones go together. Since the invention of the wireless telegraph, the concept of a disembodied voice, separated from its body, traveling the ether to manifest in a different location, has haunted the human imagination. A distress call is received by a live radio broadcast, which is typically a late night AM talk show. The caller often sounds disoriented or hysterical, claiming to have been involved in a catastrophic accident. They describe a scene of vehicle carnage, twisted metal, smoke, darkness. But then the call takes a horrific turn. I can't find my body. The radio host attempts to keep the caller on the line while the technical staff attempts to trace the signal. The climax of the legend arrives with the trace. The call is pinpointed to a location of death, a morgue, a funeral home, or the wreckage of the car where the driver had already been deceased. This legend is complex folklore that has evolved from real-world tragedies, such as the 1973 Lost Boy Larry incident, and has been told on the internet and codified by radio programs like Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM. And it covers our anxieties about the traceability of our souls in an increasingly digital world. Radio is an interesting thing in that you hear the sound of a voice without seeing its source. This nature of the radio acts as a veil because the caller is unseen. Their living status is unknown. The listener has to construct the caller's reality through the grain of their voice and the background noise. These voices come through in static, which plays a crucial role. Ghost enthusiasts describe incomprehensible signals that fade in and out of radio, and strange voices that don't reply to questions. This is auditory pareidolia, the tendency of the brain to find patterns in random noise. And it's where this legend is born. If you can hear voices in the static, it makes sense that the dead could inhabit this electronic ether, regardless of where their physical form is. The dead caller urban legend occupies this fear. The voice in the static is a victim that is trapped between the frequencies. Unlike a recorded podcast or a written story or a YouTube video, a radio call is happening now. The immediacy forces the audience to become active participants in the drama. They are witnessing a death in real time, or at least a realization of a death that has already occurred. This aligns with the concept called stone tape theory, which is often cited in paranormal circles, where emotional trauma is recorded on the environment and replayed. In this case, the radio station acts as a playback device for the trauma of the incident. The most direct beginning of the dead caller legend is the Lost Boy Larry incident of August 1973. This event is a blueprint for the legend, a child calling for help from a wrecked vehicle via radio, which sparked a massive search. In August 1973, CB and radio enthusiasts across the American Southwest began picking up a distress signal. A young boy who called himself Larry claimed to be trapped in a red and white pickup that had overturned in the mountains of New Mexico. Larry stated that he was out rabbit hunting with his father, who is now slumped over the wheel and unresponsive, presumably dead. There are parallels between the dead caller legend and this story. Just like the caller to the FM radio station, Larry used wireless technology to broadcast his plea to the void. There's also an unknown location. Larry did not know where he was, mirroring the "I can't find my body" disorientation. He was trapped in a liminal space that defied finding. Larry described his father as dead, and in the urban legend, the trauma is eternalized. The caller is the dead victim. The Lost Boy Larry story is an externalized version of the same horror, a child trapped with a corpse waiting to join them. The Lost Boy Larry incident triggered one of the largest search and rescue missions in New Mexico history. It involved the National Guard, the Air Patrol, and hundreds of volunteers. However, despite the pleas on the signal, no truck was ever found. The signal eventually faded, and authorities declared it as a hoax. The fact that it was called a hoax helped build the legend. A confirmed hoax is a closed narrative, but an unsolved hoax, where the perpetrator is never caught and the truck is never found, remains an open story in the collective consciousness. You never get closure. And it allows for supernatural takes to take root. Maybe Larry wasn't a hoaxer, but a ghost reenacting a tragedy that happened years prior. These loose strings are what create the dead caller legend. The legend solves what happened to Larry by adding the trace. In the urban legend, the police do find the truck, but the caller has been dead for days or weeks. The transition from the lost boy Larry of CB radio to the dead caller of talk radio shows the shift in media consumption. In the 1970s, CB radio was the Wild West. In the 1990s and 2000s, talk radio became a centralized stage for the strange. The legend changed and adapted, moving from the chaotic channels of CB to the amplified, curated space of the broadcast tower. An important element of the dead caller legend that separates it from a standard ghost story is the trace. The act of tracing the call serves as the bridge between the experience of the ghost and the objective reality of the living. In the pre-digital era, tracing a telephone call was a mystified process. It was not instantaneous. It required the cooperation of operators and the phone company, and the latency built tension. The host has to keep the caller talking, keep the connection open, to allow the trace to complete. The trace promises a rational solution to the irrational event. The audience expects the trace to reveal a prankster in a basement or a confused survivor in a hospital. When the trace reveals the morgue or the cemetery, it flips the technology on its head. The machine that was supposed to verify reality instead verifies the supernatural. The legend dictates that the call must end the moment the truth is revealed. The trace is the trigger for its disconnection. The host receives a note from a producer. This call is coming from the downtown morgue. This causes the host's demeanor to change. They ask a final probing question. Where exactly are you? And that causes the climax. The line goes dead or dissolves into static. This reinforces the idea that the ghost can only exist as long as it's unobserved. Once it's determined to be a ghost, the waveform collapses and the entity vanishes. The legend is popular in the United States and the UK, but it has found a potent and dangerous version in Mexico, specifically surrounding the radio program Mano Peluda. Here, the legend of the dead caller bled into the real-life deaths of the radio host, creating a story of a cursed broadcast. The most infamous case in the history of Mano Peluda is a case of Josué Velázquez. In the mid-2000s, Jose called host Juan Ramón Sáenz, and he claimed to be a Satanist in the grip of a demonic pact. He described the horrific suffering and claimed that they, the demons, would not let him die despite his wealth and power. The story aligns with the dead caller through the mechanisms of the supernatural. The legend claims that the act of broadcasting Jose's voice transmitted the curse to the listeners and the host. In 2011, Juan Ramón Sáenz died suddenly, and the audience immediately linked his death to the Jose interview, specifically a follow-up investigation where Sáenz visited Jose. The story goes that Jose transmitted his death debt to Sáenz. The radio host became the proxy victim. This is a variation of the dead caller trope where the host becomes a dead body at the end of the story. The legend was further cemented by the death of the show's original host, Ruben Garcia Castillo. For the audience, the pattern was undeniable. Touching the frequencies of the dead results in a final price. This real-world lore reinforces the fictional urban legend. If you call the radio station from the other side, from the dead side, death is the inevitable result. There is a Mano Peluda segment involving the woman in white, or La Llorona legend. Here, a group of youths pick up a woman who points to a curve in the road and says, "That's where I died," just before the car crashes. This is also similar to the dead caller legend. Instead of the victim calling the station, the victim is in the call, narrating their own death to the passengers. In North America, the dead caller legend is linked to the late-night radio culture fostered by Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM. Bell created a sanctuary for the strange, a safe space where the impossible is not only allowed, but welcome. Every Halloween, Art Bell rebranded his show as Coast to Coast AM, opening the lines unscreened to anyone with a ghost story. This created an annual ritual where the audience expected the dead to speak. The dead caller legend thrived in this environment. The ghost-to-ghost format trained listeners to accept that the people calling were not vetted, the stories are first-person accounts of the impossible, and that the radio spectrum at night is a porous border between words. While it wasn't a car accident story, the frantic Area 51 caller from 1997 is a similar story to the dead caller legend, and probably influenced its modern form. In this call, a man called Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM hysterical. claiming to be hunted by the government or aliens, saying he has limited time. He reveals the terrifying truth that there are extra-dimensional beings. Then, the station's transmitter is mysteriously knocked offline, ending the call abruptly. The incident proved to the audience that a radio call could be dangerous and that the powers that be could intervene to cut the signal. The dead caller legend took the interrupted signal trope. Caller is cut off by the reality of their own death catching up to them. In Frederick, Maryland, there was an incident involving the Elliot in the Morning radio show. A caller identifying himself only as Joseph contacted the Elliot in the Morning show to report a discovery. He claimed to have found a dead body in a wooded area near a tent city. This was shocking. The shocking detail was that he had found the body weeks prior and had not called the police. He chose to call a radio show first to brag about his amazing find. Host Elliot Siegel had to perform the reality check, repeatedly urging the caller, "Dude, call the cops." The police did find the body based on the radio segment. The radio call became the primary evidence of the death. The specific phrasing, "I can't find my body," is the emotional core of the legend. It moves the story from physical horror to existential dread. Psychologically, the caller's state resembles Cotard's delusion or walking corpse syndrome, a rare mental disorder where the sufferer holds the delusional belief that they are dead, do not exist. In this legend, the caller is dead, but they believe that they are alive. They feel the phantom limb of their entire existence. I can't find my body. The I is the voice on the radio, and the body is the corpse in the wreck. They're now two separate entities, and this causes horror to creep in. The legend implies that the caller is trapped in a loop, that they are reliving moments immediately following the crash. The "I can't find my body" plea is a signal, like a distressed beacon with a stuck switch. As actual terrestrial radio has declined, the legend has migrated to the on-demand world of podcasts and internet fiction like creepypasta. The medium changes, but the message remains. The digital signal is haunted. The creepypasta of Clifford Hoyt represents a survivor variant. Hoyt suffered a horrific car crash, but claimed to have visited hell. He was later found in his apartment playing music to drown out the demons he could still hear. While Hoyt is a visual horror figure, often associated with a disturbing image with the creepypasta, the auditory element, the need to drown out voices, links him to the radio legend. He is the caller who found his body but wishes he hasn't. The urban legend of the dead caller who cannot find their body is a sophisticated piece of modern folklore that serves a function. In an era where we are constantly connected via technology, the fear of being disconnected, being alone, is massive. The legend shows us that even in death, the signal still exists. We can still make that one last call. The radio station becomes a technological deity capable of locating us when we are lost in the dark. The "I can't find my body" story is the ultimate expression of modern alienation. We are voices in a cloud, pictures on a screen, signals in the ether. The legend asks us the terrifying question: if the signal is strong enough, does it matter if the transmitter is broken? The dead caller suggests the answer is yes, and that there is always someone listening. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, The Spooky Lawyer. Make sure that you like, share, comment on this video, and hit the hype button. Follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, and TikTok. My username is The Spooky Lawyer. If there is a spooky or disturbing story you would like me to cover, leave a comment and tell me about it, or send me an email. My email address is thespookyLawyer@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a link in the bio to buy me a coffee so you can buy me a coffee. Or you can become a member of this channel. For the $1.99 tier, you can get access to exclusive content, including exclusive videos. I appreciate you considering this. You can also support me by liking, sharing, and watching my videos. And I do appreciate that you watch my videos. And please stay spooky.